Welcome to another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show, Pub Sports Radio, Wednesday, December 28th. And we are finally back for the first show after the Christmas break. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack. Finally, we have a card big enough that we can stretch the show out to 45 minutes or so. That was not the case the last 2 days. I mean, we had no games Monday, obviously, and then yesterday was like 5 games, and there was only one that was of significance. So that's why we were off the last 2 days, but we are back today. And as you can see on the schedule, Conor Mack, we're in conference season now in college basketball. Conference games and conference play has started, and this is always that sense as we approach the new year. This is when the season really gets going.
Yeah, for me, you know what's big too? I'll go through it in a few of these games. Is still, though, maybe not, we don't have a ton of fans there. The kids won't be there, for another week and a half or so. So in a few of these, some of these road teams can maybe get it done in a quieter arena or wherever they're at and get a few W's. So, but I'm pumped. I'm ready to roll.
All right, we're ready to roll, and we've got to knock one of the games off the list that I had on the marquee games because it just started a few minutes ago, and that's Tennessee and Ole Miss. I'm on Ole Miss plus the points for what it's worth, plus 7.5 against Tennessee. That game just started, so we'll move on to Villanova.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just before you touch that, it was a mistake by me. I should have been on Yale, huge, against Monmouth. I don't know how you don't just take UNC Wilmington. I mean, they should beat them by 20. Ryder has all these teams. So if you can get it right now, just tipped, I would take Wilmington to lay it against Monmouth there.
I certainly wouldn't take the underdog. That's for damn sure in that game. No. That's a bad rebuilding Monmouth program. All right, Villanova and UConn will be our first game here of the marquee games in the Big East. We've got obviously a Villanova, big underdogs here. You don't see them as double-digit dogs very often, but here they are. They're UConn with 12.5 points as a home favorite here, 137 the total in this game. Money's coming in on Villanova. I can see why. There's always examples of this where a team's been rolling in non-conference. Conference play gets here. A little more familiarity between the teams. Obviously, we play each other every season. It might be more difficult for UConn now that we're in conference play, where now they've got coaches, they've got opponents that kind of know what they're up against. That being said, I'm not in a rush to step in front of UConn still. I mean, you're talking about absolute dominance, both ends of the floor, elite numbers, elite stats, really at both ends of the floor early on this season for Danny Hurley's UConn team. They've been outstanding. The guard play has been good. They have Sanogo, one of the better big men in the country. They can, shut it down. They can rebound. They score. They got inside-outside balance. They defend. They do everything well, and that's why it's going to be, I think, a challenge here for Villanova. But you are getting, Villanova at a very attractive price here. We're talking Villanova in the 12-point underdog range here in this game. Again, we're not used to seeing Villanova getting this kind of points very often. They're 1-2 straight up on the road this season. So, again, they haven't had a ton of true road performances. You saw them at St. Joe's. They were 12-point road favorites. They only won that game by 7. And then the 73-71 loss to Michigan State back in November. But they did cover the number as 6.5-point dogs. We did see UConn finally drop a game to the point spread, 84-73, their win against Georgetown. They were 22-point home favorites, only won by 11. I don't think it's definitely, look, UConn's at the zenith of their value. There's none. There's no bargains to be had whatsoever with UConn, and that's why I'm not taking UConn tonight. But at the same time, I've not been overly impressed with Villanova. I don't think this team's on a level that they've been at the last couple of seasons based on everything that I've seen. Maybe they can get there, but clearly the Jay Wright to Kyle Neptune transition at the coaching position has clearly been an adjustment, and they've struggled, obviously, in terms of offense at times. It's been a little bit better lately. Defensive plays picked up. They have won 5 in a row. They're definitely playing better ball. But boy, oh boy, they are going to be facing a huge step up in class because this schedule really has come up light. And when you look at their step up in class games, Conor Mack, they haven't fared well in any of them. The Michigan State game lost. They had the loss to Temple early in the year, lost to Iowa State, losing to Portland, losing to Oregon on the neutral court. And this is by far the best team they've played. So I don't think there's value on UConn. There probably is a little on Villanova, but I got to see them here in a step-up game. So it's a game I'm off. I lean slightly to taking the points with Nova, but not enough to bet it. What do you think here, C-Mac?
That's where I lean here. is with the points. But look at UConn. You mentioned 11-1-1 ATS. The team's just rolling. But one thing is this conference play. I think everything will tighten up a little bit. And I like how Nova's played since Whitmore's been back. They played well. He's kind of give a spark to them. You know what? I was going through everything today, first at everything. If Nova can get to the line, this team has always been top free throw shooting team. You know this, Babano, all these last 4 or 5 years. Once again, 83%. They got to get to the line, and I think they can stay in this one. So I'm leaning to the 12 here, 12.5 with Nova.
All right, let's go to the SEC. We've got Kentucky, Missouri next up here. Kentucky 3-point road favorites, 148 the total in this game. This one is another one that's a little bit tricky, but I'll say this. Missouri, we saw them get absolutely destroyed by Kansas on the home floor. Boy, did they make up for it. I mean, they beat a solid UCF team on a neutral court. They played Illinois in the rivalry game last weekend. And 6.5-point dogs, they destroyed Illinois 93-70. This Missouri team can score. There is no question about that. It's what are you going to get from them, at the defensive end of the basketball court. I mean, offensively, they're number 4 in points per game, 4th in field goal percentage. That's going to be put to the test here, obviously, against Kentucky, who can play pretty solid at the defensive end, 52nd in the country field goal percentage allowed, 75th in points per game allowed, and also great rebounding team is Kentucky, and a weaker rebounding team is Missouri. So, it's definitely a situation where, Missouri's got some things against them. You've got a better defensive rebounding team in Kentucky, but they're a very capable offensive team. That being said, Kentucky, when you look at their schedule so far, not a single true road game for this team this season. And you can poke some holes at Kentucky's performance level. They barely beat a Michigan team up and down. They didn't cover against Yale. They've actually failed to cover 4 in a row. They didn't play well against UCLA, lost that game by 10 on a neutral court. They get blown out by Gonzaga. They lose to Michigan State. Where's the evidence of them, playing anybody decent and beating anybody decent here? Kentucky for the large part of the season. And that's kind of surprising to say that, because you look at this team that Calipari's assembled, there's a lot of guys back from last year on it. Talk about Oscar Tshiebwe, the big man. When you talk about Severe Wheeler, the point guard, CJ Frederick back, and he didn't get to play much last year because he was always hurt all the time. I mean, definitely Kentucky team that you would think is capable of beating anybody anywhere, but their step up in class games have left a lot to be desired in terms of the way they have played. So I actually am leaning a little to Mizzou here as the home dog +3 in this game. It's a small bet, nothing super strong, but I think I like the Tigers just a little bit here at +3. What do you think, Connor Mack?
I don't know what to make of the Missouri just whipping of Illinois. I was just shocked, even though I didn't bet the game, but it was just crazy after I just saw them get beat down by Kansas. You mentioned they can score, and they're up tempo. Initially, this line's come down because Kentucky can slow it down, play some defense at times, but they can get into shootouts and go back and forth. Now this is down a little bit to 148 around there. I lean over. I think this maybe come down a little bit too much. I think when is Kentucky going to show it? Is this a big win for them? Which I mentioned, maybe not a crazy crowd, but it should, there should be people there. When Kentucky's in town, you want to beat them. This is a big game. Tough for me. I lean Missouri. I got to see more of them. Hodge has been good. Brown, we know they can score it. But Toshiba, they should eat, though, Kentucky down low and on the boards, like you mentioned. I just think Kentucky's more talented. This is one I don't think I'm going to bet. I'm going to wait. I want to see them maybe catch fire like Calipari does, maybe into January, February, because I think they're talented. It's just one I'll be watching for sure.
All right, Florida, Auburn. We stay in the SEC for this next matchup here. Auburn Tigers, 5.5-point home favorites. The total in this one, 139.5. I like the over. I like the underdog here. I think Florida in this one can hang around. I know Auburn's coming off the destruction over Washington, 84-61. Very impressive bounce-back performance after the loss at USC in the game previous to that. I think when you start to look at Auburn, though, obviously they've had a nice start to the year, but George Mason, South Florida, Winthrop, Texas Southern, Bradley, Northwestern. St. Louis was actually a pretty solid win, but Colgate, Memphis was a loss for them. USC was a loss, then Georgia State and Washington. I think Auburn's going to be tough here against Florida. And Florida obviously comes into this at 7-5 compared to Auburn's 10-2 record. But look at what Florida's gone through this year. They've had Xavier, they've had West Virginia, they've had UConn. They've had some real tough games here in the early part of the season. This Florida Gators team, not I think they've been tested a little bit more than Auburn has, and I like the coach Todd Golden. That. I like that they've got good guard play. I think their defensive play, which has always been decent at times. It's gotten better. I think the last few games. Offensively, they're certainly better with Todd Golden compared to the Mike White days. I just find there's better ball movement. They share the ball more. They get better shots, inside-out balance when it's all said and done. I just like the way the Florida team executes and runs their offensive sets compared to before with Mike White. It's not that big of a surprise, to be quite honest with you, because I think they have a better coach now here with the Gators. So I like Florida here getting 5.5, and I do like the over now that it's come down a little bit. What do you think here, Conor? Florida, Auburn?
If you think this has changed, yeah, that White's gone that you mentioned there, you hate, because in the past the favorite's always been good. The last 10 in these, just going through the numbers, Auburn's beat up Florida 2 ATS. They're 1-9 when Florida's play a team on the road with a good winning percentage. I lean the other way. I just don't love the 5. I'd be on Auburn here in this one. I kind of lean under, but I don't know what to make. We've had the early schedule. I don't know how good defensively Auburn is with these numbers. Maybe they are. Florida with Castleton, he can kind of take over a game and lead you. But I'd lean Auburn. I think they could cover the number here and slightly lean under.
All right, next up, Wichita State, UCF. This one, UCF 6-point home favorites in this game, 124 being the total across the board. I'm not a big Wichita fan, but look, points are going to be at a premium here. Neither team's going to push pace. Both teams are capable of going on long offensive droughts. There's no question about that. If you've seen them play this year, you know that. I mean, you're talking about a UCF team that offensively, they can struggle sometimes. They're a little bit better than they've been in the past, but it's not great. And Wichita, the one thing they're great at is playing defense. Their defensive numbers are excellent. And on the flip side, same old shit with Wichita. I've said this really for a couple of years and really hasn't changed. Obviously Isaac Brown's been the coach now a couple of years there now, but no change in their offense. It's stagnant, stale. Ball movement's not great. They just struggle to put the ball in the basket. They don't have a lot of great back. They don't have a great backcourt by any stretch of the imagination. It doesn't help either that you look at one of their key players, Craig Porter, a junior. Looks like he got injured in the last game against Texas Southern, ankle sprain, questionable for tonight. That's bad news for an already struggling offensive team. We'll have to see if he's able to suit up here for the Shockers tonight. But I know they're betting it up. I think it's just one of those quintessential line moves, Conor, where people just see 120. They figure it's too low for a college basketball game. We're going to bet it over. Not me now, especially now that it's 124, 125. I mean, I would look under. And if anything, you're now getting a good number on this game if you like the under. Wichita's gone under in 3 straight games. Those games were 119, 108, 121. None of those games reached this number as far as the total. UCF, they've been a little bit more in terms of their games being higher scoring, but not setting the world on fire by any stretch. So I lean dog, and I certainly now with the number going up, I think it's gone up too much. I lean under the total. What do you think here, C-Mac?
I think you put it there. 120 was just too low. So I think this is kind of where the number would be. I lean under. I'm not going to get there, even though I think it could stay there. Shockers just can't shoot. But Tenacity, very good defensive team, but they just 43%, 28 from 3. You mentioned UCF a little bit better. And it's the classic number. We have a few of these. We just mentioned Auburn, the 6. Can they make maybe free throws if this game's a little bit tighter? I lean the points with Wichita. It's just, can they make enough shots? Can they get the free throw line and hit them? But I lean that way. And I'll stay off the total, even though I'd look under now that we're at 125.
All right, there we go. So dog and under. We're both leaning in that direction. All right, how about a little Mountain West action here? Colorado State and New Mexico. We got New Mexico 6-point home favorites, 152 the total in this one. I love me some Colorado State as dogs. I've always liked getting points with this team under Nico Medved. I know David Moody's been the focal point the last couple of years. They don't have him anymore, but this is still a pretty good Colorado State team. They didn't have their greatest game against USC. They did disappoint me a little bit. I thought they could win that game, but they fell short, lost by 9. That's all right. They've still had some good results this year. They beat St. Mary's outright on the road in Moraga, that little gym as well, 62-60. Isaiah Stevens, a very strong scorer for them. John Tonye as well. Rivera, Cartier. I mean, they've got good inside-outside balance. Offensively, they can flat out score and shoot the basketball. Their numbers there are very strong. Defensively, not great, but not, they're a slightly above average defensive team. New Mexico, on the other hand, can absolutely light it up. They are 12th in the country points per game, 27th field goal percentage going into this game. I mean, the total's high. It's high for a reason. I do like the over as well in this game, even though we're talking 152 to 153 as far as this total goes. You look at the meetings last year, Colorado State won both meetings against New Mexico, and both games got into the 150s. I think you see more of the same here. I like Colorado State because, you look at last year, Colorado State won at home 80 to 74, and then here at the pit in New Mexico, Colorado State just destroyed New Mexico 83 to 68. Now, granted, Richard Pitino's doing a nice little reclamation job here, and they are 12-0. But, you can poke some holes in the schedule that New Mexico's played. I mean, they had a nice, decent win against San Francisco, pretty good win against Iona, against his old man, Papa Pitino, in that game. But the win against SMU early in the season is kind of a hollow win because SMU hasn't been nearly as good this season. So I think this is actually going to be one of the tougher games that opponents that New Mexico has faced this year, in my opinion. So I like Colorado State a little bit here, getting the points in this one. I think it's a competitive game. What do you think here, Conor? Colorado State, New Mexico.
Well, Colorado State's going to be shorthanded. That's in the end kept me off. And it's all mostly their bench guys, but they average 7-8. Jackson, Lake, Strong, they'll all be out. I think they have 7 or 8 scholarship guys. So you mentioned Stevens, Tonji have to be huge. These guys have to huge, big game, big minutes tonight. You mentioned the losses last year. I think they want a little bit of revenge with Mashburn because initially when I saw this, I kind of leaned Colorado State. With those guys out, it's too many minutes here. I think they could run out of gas. I lean the other way a little bit with New Mexico.
All right, leaning the other way with New Mexico, and I'm leaning toward that CSU Rams team and the over as well in that one. All right, next up, we've got Arkansas, LSU. Arkansas, 4-point road favorites, 144 the total in this one. LSU, 11-1, Arkansas, 11-1. I get it. These two teams have identical records, but, don't you dare compare the schedules these two teams have played. There's just no way you can. I mean, LSU has faced pretty much a pansy, soft schedule for the most part. I mean, what's their best win? Is it Akron? It's probably Wake, 72-70. And let's be honest, they were down by 20 at one point in that game. And then, Wake Forest completely folded in that game. I'm on Arkansas. I don't love always rushing to lay points on the road in a conference, especially early in conference season, because you haven't played those true road games in the conference schedule. And sometimes that first time you do, it's an adjustment. That's always the fear I have, laying points on the road in some of these early conference season games. But to me, there's a gap between Arkansas and LSU. Arkansas is a lot better, I think, than LSU, and I think they're going to prove it tonight. And I think they can go into a road environment. This is not the most hostile road environment imaginable here in Baton Rouge. Not even close. I think Arkansas can handle that here in this game. I think they can go in and win this. You look at their schedule, who they've played. They've had to go to Colorado, Boulder. They've had to go to a bunch of different Creighton early in the season. I mean, this is definitely a battle-tested Arkansas Razorbacks team. You look at what they've done. Certainly, I like the job that the former Murray State head coach, Matt McMahon, has done. Like the Will Wade tenure kind of fizzled out for LSU. He's done a nice job here. Don't get me wrong. It's a good hire. I like Matt McMahon. He's a good coach, good hire. I've got no issues, and he's doing a nice job. But, my guy Dutch on the NBA show, there's levels to this shit. That's what he always says. There's levels to this shit. You're playing Arkansas. You're playing a team that could win this conference. You're playing a team that could make a deep run in March in the NCAA tournament going into this game. So I definitely think this is going to be a big challenge here for LSU tonight. Yeah, there's definitely some injuries. I get it for the Arkansas side of things here with certainly Nick Smith Jr. Out indefinitely. He's someone that gives them, 21, 22, 16 points. He will be missed, no question about that. But 9-1 ATS in their last 10 road games for Arkansas, which dating back to last year, which tells you this team can go on the highway and get the job done. I like them here, minus the 4. What do you think, C-Mac?
That's my lean. You mentioned they're missing a few guys, Brazel too. I just don't know if the environment. This is a game I think Arkansas can go and get. Normally, I haven't seen enough, and LSU just hasn't played anybody like you talked about so far this year. I think they can lean that their defense has been pretty good, but I don't think they've faced anyone like Arkansas. I lean that way. I'm not going to bet this one. In the end, I'm going to stay off. And LSU, fouling team, ton of fouls. They don't shoot free throws well. Arkansas has to get that done. So I'm not rushing there, but I think they could go in there at LSU and get a W.
All right, next up, and we stay in the SEC, Alabama and Mississippi State. Alabama, 1-point road favorites, 141. See, I'm a little more hesitant to take the road team in this game. And this is not because I think Arkansas is better than Alabama. I don't necessarily think that. I just think this is a tougher matchup. I think Mississippi State could be really good, in my opinion. Now, again, they've kind of had, a schedule that's not been overly daunting, but still they beat Marquette's a good team. Utah's a good team. They had good wins in that one. They went to Minnesota, true road environment. And they blew out Minnesota. Minnesota's bad, but they didn't leave any doubt in that game. So Mississippi State's done a lot of good things here. And we have seen Alabama this year. They've lost, obviously, just twice. And UConn and Gonzaga, no shame losing to either of those two teams. I certainly would think Alabama could pull this one out, but I'm a little more hesitant to lay the road favorite here because I think Mississippi State's better than LSU, and Mississippi State's going to be tougher for Alabama than LSU will prove to be for Arkansas. We'll see how this one goes. As far as Alabama, definitely they've been certainly battle tested. It goes without saying. UConn, Gonzaga, Houston, North Carolina, Michigan State. I mean, they've played everybody pretty much, Alabama. So this has been a rugged schedule in the non-con for Nate Oates, and he deserves credit for scheduling that way here for Alabama. Like I say, Alabama's the only way I'd bet the game because I do think they're still a little bit better than Mississippi State, but it's not going to be easy. And I've been impressed with the Bulldogs too. We'll just see if they can handle this step up in competition against the Tide. I like the over a little bit as well. I think the number for a Bama game in particular is a little bit low here at 141 in this one. What do you think here, Conor?
This total, I think that's key. I think if you like Mississippi State, though, you got to look under. And this is all moved to the over, though, like you talked about. And all I know is I've bet Mississippi State unders. I think I'm 8-0. So I'm not going to rush and bet this over. And if they're in it, they're going to have to play good defense, slow it down. Their problem, they can't shoot. They just struggle to score in times, and they'll just have to lean on that defense. So I think if you like Mississippi State, you have to look at this under again. But everything's flooding on the over. I think in the end, Bama's a little bit better team. Just not easy to go in there and win. I'd lean them. I think their offense in the end can hit more shots. Just a tough one here. Kind of a coin flip for me.
You know what's actually funny is Alabama's moved up to 172nd in the country in three-point shooting percentage, 34. It's actually still better than last year. It's not great, but it's still better than last year. When it was an all-time atrocious percentage, and they could make a three. At least they're doing a little bit better job of that here so far this year. We'll have to wait and see. One thing that's concerning, Mississippi State, one of the elite teams in the country in offensive rebounding, and Alabama's had some issues on the defensive glass, and that's another thing that's going to be interesting. I mean, Alabama plays that really tough defense. They do. But sometimes they give up those second and third chance looks on the glass. Will that be the case here?
Yeah.
Tonight against Mississippi State, who, as I said, a very good offensive rebounding team.
Can they turn that into transition points? Can they get some of these boards or some of these defensive and turn it into offense will be key for them.
Yeah, fascinating game. These two SEC games are very fascinating. Arkansas, LSU, and this one too. Certainly this one, Alabama and Mississippi State. All right, Xavier and St. John's. Back to the Big East we go here. We've got Xavier 2-point road favorites, 162.5, 163 the total. Very high, but there should be plenty of points in this game. There should be tons of points in this. Xavier definitely has been very impressive offensively. Both teams are going to play with very fast pace and tempo. You want to be aware of that for sure. You look at the Xavier Musketeers. They've won 6 in a row, playing good basketball. They put a 102 on Georgetown, 80 against Cincinnati when they beat the Bearcats, 80-77, 84 points against West Virginia, trending over the total. St. John's has actually trended under, but DePaul struggles to score. Iowa State slows it down. New Hampshire's not much of an offensive team. Villanova will slow it down and play good defense, and St. John's struggled to score in that 78-63 loss This reminds me of the Florida State game that St. John's played, because you got both teams that are going to run and gun. And both of those teams got up and down the floor. It ended up 93-79. St. John's got it going offensively. The game flew over the total. I like the over here, even at the high number. And I'm going to bet this team again. St. John's is, I'm telling you, I got some kind of affinity or affliction, apparently, betting this team more often than I should. But I'm going to take them here as a +2 home underdog. I mean, we have seen Villanova. You mentioned it, since they got the young kid back, they played better. And I know that was a bad loss to get Villanova. If anything, you come back home now for your Big East home. Actually, it's not their Big East home opener, because they played DePaul earlier this year in Big East play, and they crushed DePaul 86-67. I do think you get a good effort here from St. John's here in this one. Let's be honest, too. We've seen Xavier in not too many true road environments this year. The one that they were in early in the year, they barely beat Indiana. St. John's, to me, hopefully they have a bit. If they don't play well tonight, let's say Xavier wins and covers, and Xavier wins by like 8 or 10 points on the road, then you've got to start thinking about St. John's like, hey, maybe this team's not going to be as good, or that improved team we thought they would. Because I do think there's things to like with their game. I think defensively a little bit better, but here's their chance to show it. I may not back this team for a while, St. John's, if they don't get it done tonight, but I think it's a good spot. I like the number. I'll take St. John's as a home dog +2, and I like over 162.5 as well. What do you think here, Conor? Big East, St. John's hosting Xavier.
Just over. I think even at 162, this gets over. Xavier scores almost 84. They give up 73. St. John scores 80. They give up 75. This thing still gets over. I think it's this crazy number. I want to back St. John's. I'm not going to do it. So now I got to see it more from this. It's a big game. They should win. They need to get their press, get some steals, and play a little bit better defense in the end. But I don't know if they can do that. So to me, this just goes up and down and gets over the total.
All right, next up here, we've got Boise State and Nevada as we go back to the Mountain West. Nevada 2-point home favorites, 131.5 being the total in this game. 10-3, 10-3. Both teams have had pretty good results in non-conference play. You look at Nevada, what they've gone through. I think when it comes to their schedule in particular, they've played at Tulane, Kansas State, Akron, Loyola Marymount, Pepperdine, Oregon among their non-conference games. Boise State, on the flip side, you look at who they've played. They ended up going up against Colorado, Loyola Chicago, Washington State, Texas A&M, St. Louis. So a little bit tougher for Boise State, no question about that. Last year, Boise State ended up sweeping the games against Nevada, 85-70, 73-67, and then in the conference tournament at the Thomas and Mack, it was in I believe, the quarterfinals, Boise with a 71-69 victory against Nevada for the 3-0 sweep head-to-head last year against the Wolfpack. I think this one, Nevada, I think they've improved from last year. I do. Boise State, they've certainly played well, but they're coming off a loss to Santa Clara, 73-58 on the road in their last game. And keep in mind, that was a true road game for them. I think this is one of those spots Nevada has it circled on their calendar. The Nevada team, when you look at their offensive numbers and the fact that, I think rebounding could be something that they take advantage of here in this one. Boise's defensive game is very good, but this is an offensive team that can go into some droughts. And we've seen Nevada really step things up a little bit on the defensive end of the basketball court, 25th in the country field goal percentage defense for Nevada going into this game. So again, not super strong, but I think situationally there's reasons to like Nevada. I'd lean to them here, 2.5. Or if I were to back them, I'd certainly look more on the money line here rather than the 2.5. What do you think here, Conor, with Boise State and Nevada?
Nevada, you mentioned, has been decent, to start this year, and they've been good at home against the number. This game, I think, is going to be tough. To me, I lean Boise State, but I need Shaver in this game.
Yeah.
It's still a question mark. If I hear he's in and everything's good with him, I'll lean with Boise State, especially if you get +2, right around 2.5. I'd look that way. But right now, until I hear with that news, I'm off.
Yeah, obviously that's significant. I mean, he's the be all end all offensively for the Broncos. And you look at the results without him. Well, they would survived bad teams like Oklahoma and Nebraska, Omaha without him. But when they were going on the road, faced Santa Clara, not the same. And you can see how they
They
struggled
need
to
it.
score points in that
Yeah.
game against Santa Clara without Shaver. We'll see if he's able to suit up tonight in Reno as they take on Nevada. All right, final game of the marquee games. This is also a Mountain West game. We've got Wyoming taking on Fresno State. We've got Fresno opened 2-point road favorites. We're now seeing Pick'em -1 here with Wyoming. The total in this one currently 130, 125.5. It's gone down certainly from where it was. Wyoming, it's certainly been a underwhelming season for them. 5-7 they are going into this game here tonight against Fresno State. We've talked about how so far this season they've struggled without Graham Ike, who's been certainly unavailable due to the leg injury. They've also had an issue with Kenny Foster in the last few games, unable to suit up as well for Wyoming. We'll see if those guys are able to come back. Last year when these teams played, Wyoming and Fresno, both of them very tight competitive games. Wyoming got the 61-59 win at Fresno. And then Wyoming got the 68-64 win at home against Fresno State in overtime. So close games, both of them. We'll see how they fare here if Fresno's able to avenge those two defeats in this game. And another thing, too, that's been very fascinating about Wyoming is, offensively, they shoot a lot of three-pointers. They've had some tumultuous times consistently making those 3-point shots. 182 in the country, 33.8 with their 3-point percentage shooting, but a much superior rebounding team, it looks like, compared to Fresno, especially Fresno offensive rebounding, pitiful. Wyoming, very, very good defensive rebounding team, could play an advantage here. Fresno's been up and down. I'm a big proponent in Wyoming being a bet-on team here in conference play. They've underachieved so far. They're very close to getting EK back. It's going to be sometime in early January that it looks like he's going to be back on the floor, so they're closing in on his return. I think this team's best basketball is definitely ahead of them. I think I agree with where the money's gone. I certainly liked Wyoming at +2. It's gone to Pick'em -1. I still like them here. I think they get the road win. What do you think, Connor?
Shout out to the chat, everyone here. We'll hit everyone up here in a minute before we bounce. Yeah, Danzo, I agree. I'm shocked at all this team with all the over in that Mississippi State game. Like I said, I've been like 8-0 to the under, and that's the only way I could look. Here we go, Robert Flank, and that's where I got it. 127. I took the under. You mentioned the games last year. This is Maldonado. Noah Reynolds has been good lately. I think 4 out of 5 he scored over 20 for Wyoming. They'll do better on the glass, but Fresno's just so slow. They can't score. They can't shoot. It's ugly to watch. I watched that game. I think it was a Bakersfield game. It was ugly. This doesn't get over. Even at 125.5 here, people love this over. It's still coming down. Take the under.
There you go. I agree with that. I think it probably points will be at a premium here. We saw low-scoring basketball in both meetings last year between the Cowboys and the Bulldogs. We'll see if that's the same here tonight. All right, that is the marquee games. Connor, we'll start with you. Any games we have not talked about yet that you like for tonight?
Let's keep riding them here in Chicago State, +11. Let's take them. Fall State, obviously the better team, but Chicago State could just muck up this game. They play defense. They hang around. I just think it's too many. Just stuck around with Minnesota. I've taken them 4 straight, I believe. They did have a loss, but I didn't take. I forget who that was. I just don't have their schedule pulled up. They lost by 14, but we got 11 here. I think you take the points in this one. And let's touch on. I'm on Houston. I think they beat up Tulsa. Houston, best first half team in all college basketball. I've kind of stayed off for a while. I think they come back fresh here. Take them first half, -11.5. That's about it.
Go. All right, there we go. And I like that Chicago State bet that you mentioned. I'm on that as well. Again, they've just been a covering machine for the most part. I mean, not every game, but more often than not, they've been getting the job done. They're improved enough where the betting markets are slow to adjust to it. So I'm with you there. I'm on Riders on the Storm. Total dead spot for Georgia. Are you kidding me? Georgia playing a weird non-conference home game against Rider right between The start of right in the before SEC conference play starts. I mean, Ryder to me can hang around in that game. Total dead spot for a Georgia team that isn't really all that good to begin with. And my Mike White feelings. I don't think very highly of him. So give me Ryder to hang around there. 9.5, 10-point dogs at Georgia. I think they will do just that. I like Mercer. I think they beat Samford outright, but I'll certainly take points with them. The Mercer Bears against Samford. I think that total's fallen a little low, too low in my opinion. So I'd lean over a little bit at 138 as well in that game. Davidson Fordham, I'm going to take a shot with the over there too. It's low for a Davidson game, 142.5. I know Fordham can be really erratic offensively, but I'm going to take my shot with the over in that Fordham Davidson game. Conor, any thoughts on those?
I do lean the over in the Fordham, and I take Fordham. Quisenberry is a go from what I hear. Yes. He's their team, about 20 a game, so I think Fordham wins it as well.
All right, liking Fordham there in that one. What else that we did not? Temple, East Carolina is actually a pass for me. It's the number's right in a proper spot I could see. And Temple to me on the road's just all over the map. I actually think Temple is a little better than East Carolina, but asking them to win on the road, they could easily lose this game too. So I think there's a lot of variance in that game. I'm passing on it. Missouri State, Northern Iowa. The money's coming in on Northern Iowa. They've been up and down a little bit. I kind of lean Missouri State now at +3. I haven't bet that yet. Southern Utah, I like them +6 against New Mexico State. I don't know if New Mexico State's nearly as good as they've been in certain previous recent seasons. And I think Southern Utah, and that group there, they continue to get better. They're a solid offensive team. They could always get you through the back door if need be as dogs catching points. So Southern Utah, I like in that spot at New Mexico State. And I like Air Force 17 against San Diego State. I mean, I'm going to dare the Aztecs to cover a number of this size. And Air Force 9-4, they don't do anything particularly great. But the one thing Air Force has gotten a lot better at this year is their defense. I mean, they are really playing good at that end of the floor. 30th in points per game allowed, 60th in field goal percentage defense, third in the country, 3-point percentage defense. Now, again, have they faced the most dominant schedule imaginable? No, absolutely not. But San Diego State is at the point where, again, we're seeing it repeatedly at home. 12-point favorites to Irvine, win by 3. 16.5-point favorites to Troy at home, win by 5. 22-point favorites at home last game against UCSD, UC San Diego. They win by 16. They're not covering these big numbers as big home favorites. San Diego State. So I do like Air Force here a little bit, +17 in that one. So that's about it for the main board. I do have a couple bets on the added board. There's only a couple games. Actually, there's one bet that's still left that hasn't started yet. One game that hasn't started yet from the added board that I have a bet on, and that is, and I think Starchild alluded to it, Coppin State and Richmond over the total, 144.5. I like that game over the total. We know Coppin State's going to push pace. It's just a question of do they make enough shots? I mean, sometimes they go up and down the court and they're missing shots left and right. They're turning the ball over. Hopefully they have enough efficiency offensively. Richmond should score at will against Coppin State's defense tonight. But I think Coppin State can score enough as well to get over 145 in that game. So there you go. That's everything I'm on tonight.
Yeah, I have nothing on the added board. I lean Harvard. Just don't love 6 there. That's me.
And I lean under in that Air Force game, Clark. I'm with you there. I mean, certainly I'm not rushing to bet Air Force under, and it's not like San Diego State, is consistently good offensively to trust them going over. So yeah, I'm with you there. I would lean under with Air Force and San Diego State. I don't think we left too much meat on the bone. I think we pretty much covered a lot of the games. Either earlier or just now, but there's a couple questions. Houston, we'll talk about that because Jake Burns is asking about Houston against Tulsa. I got nothing. I'm passing on that game.
The total, it's moved up, but I think in the end it's 75, 60 if they come to play, and I think it is. They should be rested. There's been problems I've mentioned on the show with them the last couple years every once in a while, but going everything, their best team first half all year long. Tulsa can get in a rut, so I definitely looking to take them first half. And the total, I'm going to stay off now that this has moved way up. Maybe it could go under now that we're up to 135.
Yeah, definitely. I would certainly lean that. Houston hasn't been that shoe-in lately as bigger favorites. Early in the year they were covering some of these bigger. And Tulsa, to me, I'll say this again about Tulsa. I think with a change in coach there this season and no more Frank Haith to deal with anymore, I think it's better for that program, honestly. I really do. And I think, I could see this coming right around the number. Tulsa's going to try to speed it up. That doesn't usually frustrate Houston. Houston doesn't mind it when teams are trying to, basically speed the game up against them. They're capable of handling that. But to me, I look at this Tulsa team. I think Eric Conkle, honestly, I actually like him a little bit more than I like Frank Haith, quite honestly. So as the head coach here, so we'll see if Tulsa can hang around in that game. Anything else on I like Illinois. I forgot to mention this. It moved a lot. Like you're not getting the number you got initially. I got 2.5 on Illinois State, the Redbirds in that in-state battle against UIC, Illinois, Chicago. I still lean that way at 1.5 currently, which is what you can get with Illinois State as a dog. But obviously, you're not getting quite the number you did initially. That's pretty much it. In this one, Duquesne +9 kind of interests me. But I ended up passing on that. I do lean to the Dukes a little bit, +9 against Dayton, but I ended up not pulling the trigger on that. I think that's about it. And Nickel State Baylor, I didn't bet that game either. Baylor's another one of those teams where if they're, inspired, they could roll. But again, they've been kind of hit or miss. No Flagler either. Yeah, exactly, which is key, for a team that defensively has not had that same Baylor defense this year. Keep that in mind, that they've not been able to get stops at the defensive end of the court like we are accustomed to with them. So I ended up off that game as well. Oh, yeah, UNLV San Jose State. I'm not stepping in front of UNLV. I like that team a lot. I think they're at least a decent amount better than San Jose State, but I've seen this with UNLV before. Then they get into conference play and laying points on the road with them. It gets a little tricky sometimes. If they're ever going to do it, it's now. I think this is a good UNLV squad, but I need to see it first. I would lean to the Rebels, but I'm just not quite there yet with them that I'm comfortable laying 5 in an early conference game.
This UNLV should go in there and win by 10. So I lean to them covering the number as well, but probably one I'm not going to bet. Just watch.
There we go. Kansas touchdown, by the way, in the Liberty Bowl, which is now underway. Arkansas got a field goal on their opening drive, and Kansas has responded with a touchdown. So 6-3 extra point.
There should be points. I don't know if it gets over the number, but there should be plenty there.
I have a small bet on the over. I have more on Kansas. Definitely more on Kansas. And you're seeing they're fired up. Kids are going nuts every time they make a positive play. They're into this, Kansas. And you knew they would be. They haven't been bowling in forever, this program. You knew they'd be fired up for this game. And Kansas has started out that way. All right, great stuff. Thanks to everybody in the chat for joining us. 119 live viewers. Hit the like button. Make sure you do that. We appreciate it very much. Yes, Derek, I'm on Air Force, plus the points against San Diego State. We will wrap it up in a few minutes with best bets on this Wednesday edition of the College Basketball Net Profit, right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com, promo code PubSports, 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code PubSports. All right, it is time for Best Bets to wrap it up for this Wednesday edition of the show. Conor Mack, what do you got, Best Bets?
Shout out to Rich. I think in this game, if they cover Chicago State, it does stay under that 138, my guy. Chicago State plus 11.5. The lone other game, Fresno, Wyoming, under 127. There's 126.5 out there. So give me that here for the show.
I like it. Liking the under there for Conor Mack with his best bet. And it's funny, Keith Landry asking Richmond team total. over 80. I wouldn't talk you out of that, but I'm going to trust Coppin State to do some of the scoring for me. This is a complete flat spot for Richmond, and I think that could show up defensively for them, where they're just not, keyed in and locked in at that end of the floor. So I think Coppin State's going to get some points in that game tonight, which leads me right in perfectly. Great segue to my best bet, and it is that game. It is Coppin State. It is Richmond. Over 144.5 is the best number out there right now. I like that game to go over the total. I think you're going to see definitely enough points to get there. Coppin State and Richmond will go over 144.5 for my best bet here for this Wednesday edition of the Net Profit College Basketball Show. That'll wrap things up. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. We're back tomorrow and Friday. We will have shows as scheduled, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow and Friday. We've got pretty decent-sized cards both days.
Big
tomorrow
card.
And Friday.
Tomorrow.
Big card. Tomorrow.
This is a perfect size card. This should be every day right around this size. But it's another story.
That'll be a big one tomorrow for sure, and we're looking forward to it. No question. Friday a little smaller, and then you talk about big cards. Join us Saturday morning for the College Basketball Pub Hub Show, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Connor, Mac, me, and Dabby Cab on Saturday morning, because it is going to be a huge New Year's Eve slate of college basketball. So, and we'll have you covered for, we won't go the full 2 hours. We'll go about an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. Saturday morning, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, and get you ready for a massive Saturday of college basketball. That's a wrap. Thanks to everyone for joining us. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Wednesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again tomorrow on Thursday for another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show right here on Pub Sports Radio.